There is a stretch of the Blue Ridge where the soil is maybe 6 inches deep before you hit rock. The nearest store that sold anything in a bottle was 2 hours by wagon, and a man with cash money in his pocket was rare enough that people remembered his name. That is the country these methods came out of. Appalachian farmers didn't grow food without chemicals because they were purists. They did it because there was nothing to buy, no money to buy it with, and no road to go get it. When you can't purchase a solution, you have to understand the problem. So they did. For about 150 years they worked steep, thin, rocky ground and kept it producing, and every single thing they knew about weeds came out of watching, failing, and telling the next person what worked. Roundup didn't reach a store shelf until 1974. Most of what I'm about to give you is older than that by a century. 25 things. I've broken them into 5 groups so you can find what fits your yard. And I'm going to be straight with you the whole way. Which ones still work today, which ones only half work, and the last 4, which I've put on this list specifically so you'll stop using them. Because 4 of the 25 will damage your ground, and every one of those 4 is being recommended somewhere online this week as a natural alternative. Let's go. First group is the hand, and what it holds. 1. Boiling water. A full kettle, poured, in a thin, steady stream, directly onto the crown where the stem meets the dirt, not sprinkled across the leaves, poured at the base. It ruptures the cell walls straight down through the top inch of root. On anything shallow rooted in a crack, that's a kill and not a setback. Crabgrass in a driveway seam, chickweed between pavers, the green stuff along a concrete edge. 1 kettle covers about 10 feet of seam. On a taproot like dandelion or thistle, it's a knockdown. Regrowth in roughly 2 weeks, and you go again. The 3rd round usually finishes it. Costs nothing, works instantly, and leaves nothing behind in the soil. 2. The scuffle hoe. Some call it a stirrup hoe or a hula hoe. A loop of sharpened steel on a long handle that rocks as you push and pull. You do not chop with it. You slide it just under the surface, about a 1/4 inch down, and you walk. That 1/4 inch is the entire method. A young weed keeps its growing point right at the soil line. Cut below it and the plant cannot rebuild. Chop deeper with a common garden hoe, and you do 2 harmful things in one stroke. You leave root fragments that resprout, and you turn buried seed up into the light where it germinates. My grandfather scuffled the same rows every 10 days from April through August and finished in 20 minutes. He was never killing big weeds, he was killing them at the thread stage, before you could tell what they were going to be. 3. The mattock, and only for taproots. Dandelion, dock, burdock, thistle. These store their energy in a deep root and they will regrow from a fragment. A trowel gets you the top 2 inches and guarantees you'll see that plant again. The old way was a mattock, driven in at an angle about 6 inches off from the plant, then levered so the whole root column lifts out intact. You want the crown and the first 6 to 8 inches of root. Below that, the root is mostly water storage and won't resprout. 1 properly removed dandelion beats 20 pulled tops. 4. Pull after rain, never before. Sounds too simple to matter. It is the difference between removing a weed and snapping its head off. Dry soil grips the root and the stem breaks. Soil that's had an inch of rain on it releases the root whole. Mountain women weeded the morning after a storm, not on a dry afternoon, and if it hadn't rained, they soaked the patch and came back an hour later. 5. Fire. Flame weeding is older than any of us. The point is not to burn the plant to ash. That wastes fuel and starts grass fires. You pass the flame across the leaf for about a second, just long enough that the water inside the cells boils and the walls burst. The plant looks untouched for an hour, then wilts, and it's dead by evening. Excellent on gravel, driveway seams, and paths. Never near dry grass, never near mulch, never on a windy day. They did this in the early morning, while everything around the target was still wet with dew. 6. Cut the head before it seeds. There's a saying in those hollows: 1 year's seeding, 7 years weeding. Common lamb's quarters will put 70,000 seeds off one plant. Purslane, more than that. A good portion of it stays viable in your soil for decades, waiting for you to turn it up into the light. So the real work is not killing the weed in front of you, it's making sure it never sets seed. If you take one single thing from this whole video, walk your yard once a week between now and frost, and take the head off anything that's flowering. Don't dig it, don't spray it, just the head. 15 minutes a week, and you'll cut next spring's weed pressure further than any product on any shelf. 7. Repeated cutting, on purpose. A perennial weed lives off stored root energy. Every time it pushes new top growth, it spends some of that store, and every time you remove that top growth before it can photosynthesize its way back to even, the account goes down. They scythed problem patches every 2 weeks, not once a season. Consistency is what kills a perennial, not force. 3 cuts spaced right will beat 1 heroic effort with a shovel. Second group, shutting out the light. Everything here works on the same principle, which is that a seed needs light and a plant needs sun, and if you take both away, time does the rest. 8. Cardboard. Flattened, overlapped by 4 inches at every seam so there's no light gap, laid directly on top of the weeds. Wet it down, then 4 inches of chips or straw over the top. You're not killing anything with chemistry. Everything underneath burns through its stored energy, reaching for a sun that never comes, and in about 8 weeks it's gone. The cardboard breaks down and feeds the soil on its way out. They did it with newspaper and old hay, because that's what cost nothing. This is still the most reliable way to reclaim a bed that's gone entirely to weeds. Start one now, and it's ready to plant in spring. 9. Straw, and know the difference. Straw is the hollow stalk left after grain is harvested. Hay is cut grass, dried, and it is full of seed. Mulch a bed with hay and you have planted a meadow. 6 inches of clean straw around anything you're growing suppresses nearly everything and breaks down into the soil by the end of the season. Ask for straw by name and look at it before you buy it. 10. Sawdust and bark on the fence lines. 3 inches along fences, around posts, under deck edges. Same light principle. One real warning. Fresh sawdust ties up nitrogen as it decomposes, so keep it out of anything you're actively growing in, and use it only where you want pure suppression. Aged wood chips are the safer choice near beds. 11. Feed sacks and old carpet. Burlap feed sacks got laid down in rows, weighted with rocks, and left. Nothing wasted. Later on, it was old wool carpet along fence lines. I'll be honest with you about the modern version. Landscape fabric works for about 2 years, then weed seed germinates in the mulch sitting on top of it, roots grow down through the weave, and you're left with a mat you can't remove and weeds you can't pull. Burlap rotted away and fed the soil. Plastic fabric does not. Skip it and use cardboard. 12. Wood chips on every path. 4 inches deep on every walkway and between every row. This is the least glamorous item on the list, and probably the highest return. Bare ground grows weeds. That is simply what bare ground does. Every square foot of your property that isn't planted and isn't covered is an open invitation. Mountain farms had no bare ground anywhere. It was crop, sod, or mulch. Nothing in between. Third group, letting something else do the work. 13. Goats. Goats will take briars, multiflora rose, poison ivy, and honeysuckle down to bare stem in a way no machine matches, and they'll do it on ground too steep to walk. 14. Hogs. A hog will root an entire patch out, roots included, and turn the ground while doing it. They ran hogs across a field they meant to plant the following year, and the field came up clean. Most of you don't have either animal. Here's why it still matters. What actually kills a perennial is sustained, repeated removal of top growth. The animal was only the method. Your mower does the same job on smaller weeds if you're consistent. 15. Buckwheat. This is the one almost nobody does anymore, and it's the best idea on this entire list. Buckwheat is up in 4 days, a foot tall in 3 weeks, and shades the ground so completely that nothing beneath it gets started. It also puts out compounds that suppress germination around it. Broadcast it thick across a bare patch, let it run 6 weeks, cut it before it seeds, and leave it lying where it fell as mulch. You've smothered the weeds, added organic matter, and fed the soil with one $2 handful of seed. If there's a corner of your property that goes to weeds every year without fail, this is your answer, and you can still get around in before frost. 16. Cereal rye. Rye does something buckwheat doesn't. As it grows and as its residue breaks down, it releases compounds that actively inhibit small seeds from germinating. It's a natural pre-emergent, and unlike buckwheat, it will overwinter. Sow it in fall across bare ground, let it stand through winter, cut it in spring, and leave the residue lying. That mat suppresses the early flush of annual weeds while your soil warms. One caution that matters: those same compounds affect small seeds generally. Don't sow anything fine into rye residue for about 3 weeks after you cut it. Transplants are fine. 4th group, the ground itself. This is where the real difference between an old farm and a modern yard shows up. Before I get into it, one thing. Everything in this video I had to reassemble from scattered sources, because nobody publishes the version where you skip the expensive step and use what's already on your property. I've put the whole year in one place at backyardverdict.com, what to do in which week, from thaw to frost, in the order it actually needs doing. There's a code on the screen if that's easier than typing. That's the only time I'll bring it up, and then we're straight back to it. 17. Mow high. Set the deck to 3.5 or 4 inches instead of 2. That's the whole method. Tall grass shades the soil surface. Crabgrass seed, and most annual weed seed, needs light striking bare dirt to germinate. A dense canopy at 4 inches means that light never arrives. My grandfather never once said the words weed control, but he cut hay high and kept his pasture thick, and the reason was exactly this. Cutting short is how people manufacture the weed problem they then go buy a product to fix. If you do one thing today, raise your mower deck before anything else on this list. 18. Wood ash from the stove. Ash is strongly alkaline and carries potassium. Spread thin over ground that's gone acidic, it lifts the pH, and a lot of the weeds that colonize a neglected acidic patch, sorrel, plantain, moss, lose their advantage. Grass takes back over. This only helps if your soil is genuinely acidic. If it isn't, you'll overshoot and create a different problem that takes 2 years to unwind. 19. Lime, and the test that comes first. Same principle, and more controllable. Lime was hauled in and spread every few years because everyone understood that sour ground grows the wrong plants. Here's the part nobody did back then, and everybody should now. Get a soil test. About $15 through your county extension office. Applying lime blind is the single most common way people make their weed problem worse while believing they're fixing it. $15 and 2 weeks of waiting will tell you whether items 18 and 19 apply to you at all. 20. Compost the manure first. Fresh manure is loaded with viable weed seed. Everything the animal ate and didn't fully digest goes straight onto your ground. They stacked it and let it sit, and a properly built pile heats to a temperature that kills weed seed. Spread it fresh, and you are broadcasting weeds with a shovel while telling yourself you're feeding the soil. If someone offers you free manure, ask how old it is. 21. Stop turning the soil over. This is the hardest one for people to accept because it feels like doing nothing. There are thousands of weed seeds per square foot in your soil right now, sitting in the dark where they cannot germinate. Every time you till, you bring a fresh batch to the surface and hand it exactly what it was waiting for. Then you till again to deal with those, and bring up more. Steep mountain ground couldn't be deeply tilled anyway. It would have washed off the hillside, so they disturbed as little as possible and mulched everything. The result was less weed pressure every year rather than more. Fifth group, the 4 things they used that you should not. I'm putting these on the list because every one of them still gets recommended online as a natural alternative, and natural does not mean harmless. Arsenic is natural. Their generation used all 4 of these and then stopped, and they stopped for reasons. 22. Salt. It kills weeds. It kills them by pulling water out of every cell, and it's been used that way since Roman times. It also does not break down, does not wash away in any useful time frame, and wrecks soil structure so completely that heavily salted ground can stay dead for years. People pour it in a driveway crack, feel clever, and 2 seasons later wonder why the grass along that entire edge is thin and yellow. Salt travels with water. It goes wherever the runoff goes, which is downhill into everything you care about. 23. Borax. This one is everywhere online right now for Creeping Charlie, and there's a real mechanism behind it. Boron is toxic to that plant at low concentration. The trouble is the gap between the dose that kills the weed and the dose that kills your grass is narrow enough that most people miss it, and boron accumulates. It does not leave. Apply it twice, and you can end up with a patch where nothing grows properly for years. I would not put it on ground I cared about. 24. Sodium chlorate. This was the total weed killer of that era. It worked on everything and sterilized the ground for a season or more. It also had a habit nobody warns about now, because it isn't sold anymore. It's a powerful oxidizer, and clothing that had it spilled on it and then dried would ignite from a spark or ordinary friction. There are old accounts of men catching fire in the field. It's been off the shelves across most of the world for years, and it belongs in a history lesson, not in your shed. 25. Used motor oil and creosote on the fence lines. Every farm did this. You drained the tractor and poured it along the fence, and nothing grew there again for a long time. It also doesn't break down. Those compounds move down through soil into groundwater, and they persist for decades. If you bought an older rural property, there may well be a strip along an old fence line where nothing has grown in 40 years, and this is why. It was normal, it was universal, and it was a mistake nobody understood at the time. So here's what to actually do with all of this. This weekend, walk the whole yard once and take the head off anything in flower. 15 minutes, costs nothing, and it's the highest return item in this video. Then raise your mower deck to 3.5 inches and leave it there permanently. Then pick your worst patch, the one that comes back every single year, and either lay cardboard and mulch over it, or broadcast buckwheat if you'd rather have it working for you than just covered. Either way, you get that ground back by spring. Order a soil test this week, so you know by October whether ash and lime apply to you at all. Keep the kettle for driveway seams. Keep the scuffle hoe standing by the door where you'll actually reach for it. And leave the salt, the borax, and anything that promises to sterilize your ground exactly where it is, because the soil is the one thing on your property you can't go buy another of. One last thing, and I'd truly like to know this. Down in the comments, tell me what your people used. Every family that ever worked a piece of land has one: a jar of something in the shed, a trick with a hoe, something your grandmother did every spring that nobody ever wrote down. Half the methods in this video only survive because somebody said them out loud to somebody else. Put yours down there. The person who finds this next spring is going to need it more than I do.